There has been a murder.
There's been a murder.
What's going on, guys? It's Barry here with the Scryguystv, and today we're going to be talking about the Revenant Recon Precon deck from Murders at Karlov Manor with Mirko, Obsessive Theorist, at the helm. It is a 1 and Demir legendary creature vampire detective. Flying Vigilance. Whenever you surveil, put a 1/1 counter on Mirko. At the beginning of your end step, you may return target creature card with power less than Mirko from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. So this is very reminiscent of Marin, which is the bane of a lot of EDH players' existence from back in the day. Not so much now, but back then it was annoying. And this is sort of taking that helm. Now, with the thing about Marin is, before she used to have a certain amount of experience counters to recur certain things from the graveyard, and experience counters aren't things that you can get rid of or tick down. Well, maybe now, I'm not too sure. I can't. It was hard, at least back then. It was really hard to tick those things down. But with Mirko, this one also has that same caveat, but it has to have the +1/+1 counters on there, so it's equal to the power of that. And then also with the finality coming down, if that creature gets removed, it can possibly get exiled and you no longer will have access to it. So let's look at the deck list at this point. There's the Precon. We're having 29 creatures, 18 instants and sorceries, 9 artifacts, 6 enchantments, and 37 lands. Let's look at I don't know why I said it like that. Let's look at some new cards that are coming into the deck as well. We have Dog Detective. Oh no, that's not new at all. Let's see. Final Word Phantom, which is a 2 and a blue creature, spirit detective, flash flying. During each opponent's end step, you may cast spells as though they had flash. A really cool budget alternative to things like Line of Anticipation and Vidalcan Ori. I don't know why it's just well, I guess it makes sense that it's only tagged to the end step, so you can't interact with people as much as you can if you had a Vidalcan Ori or Line of Anticipation out. I believe Unshakable Tail is one of the new ones as well. When it enters the battlefield at the beginning of your upkeep, surveil. Or when it enters the battlefield, or at the beginning of your upkeep, surveil one, which is gonna be great for us to be able to trigger our Mirko. And then you, whenever one or more creatures are put into the graveyard from the library, you get to investigate. So a little bit of card draw, and then it also has an ability to sacrifice a clue, return it to the from the graveyard to your hand. So it's a nice recurable creature that you don't need to waste Mirko on, because you can do that last ability at end step by itself. So that's great. Let's see what else is new in this deck. Marvo, Deep Operative, 3 and Demir legendary creature, Octopus Rogue. I don't know how Octopus goes rogue, but whenever it attacks, clash with defending player. So clashes like the both of you reveal the top of your deck. Whoever has the highest CMC wins that clash, and then you can either put it at the bottom or the top for the both of you. But if you win a clash, you get to draw a card. Then you may cast a spell from your hand with mana value 8 or less without paying its mana cost. Really great, actually. Like, I'm not usually a fan of the secondary commanders in precons because it always seems to do something like too different. But this one seems to work pretty well with the whole theme of the deck, because you're going to be surveilling, so you're going to at least have a lot of knowledge of the top of your library. And there's some decent sized spells in here that you should be able to win a clash and be able to draw a card and cast said clash card. So I really actually like him being in here. I'm going to keep Marvo in this deck, just because it's also 1/8. It doesn't have the evasion, so obviously it could possibly get chunk blocked. But if you go against if you swing it at the player with one creature or something like that, you should be fine. What else is new? Watcher of Hours, I think, is really great, and I kind of want it for my Unesh deck. but it has to spend 6 for 1 and a blue instead of the 5 and a blue. But this one says this one is a flying it's a flying ward 3. Whenever you remove a time counter from Watcher of Hours while it's exiled, surveil 1. So it's really great. If we are able to have it in early turns, we can suspend it for 2, put down our Mirko at 3, and then going forward for at least 4 more turns, we get a free surveil, and then we get a free 6/6. So that's really cool. I debated taking it out, but I think because of the suspend and the surveil thing at the beginning of the whenever you remove a time counter, I think it's great either way. If you recur it, then you just have a big 6/6 beater in the air. So either way, I think it's fine for the moment, and especially we'll get to our $100 upgrades in a bit. I have the Dusk Mantle, which is a new card as well. 5 and 2 black, flying lifelink. You may play Lance and cast spells from among cards in your graveyard you surveil this turn. If you cast a spell if you cast a spell this way, you may pay life equal to the mana value rather than paying the mana cost. Now, originally I wanted to take this out, but then I had to reread Mirko again because, you know, sometimes you get so jumbled up with all the words now that are in Magic cards that I forgot this. I forgot Mirko goes off the power and not the CMC. So this being a 3/8 is great. Mainly what you want to do with this is to surveil it away, because if you surveil it away, you can bring it back. Mirko should at least be big enough, like 4 power, and that's enough to bring it back into play. And then hopefully you have one of the upgraded cards in your upgrades to be able to have this stick around even if it dies. And I think that's it for the creatures. For the new spells, I believe the only new spell to my knowledge, 2 new spells. So we have Counterpoint, which is 3 in Dimir, instant counter target spell. You may cast a creature, instant, sorcery, or planeswalker spell from your graveyard with the mana value less than or equal to that spell's mana value without paying its mana cost. Really cool counter spell. I mean, it is 5, but it's doing a lot. It's also it's disregarding timing restrictions, because when you counter a spell, you can go ahead and cast instant, creature, sorcery, planeswalker. It's a great spell for casual. I think it can kind of get out of hand if you have something big enough. If you're countering something big enough, if you're going against Timmy decks, that you're going to be able to cast one of our big spells in here. And then we also have Charnel's Serenade, Serenade, which is 4 and 2 black, surveil 3, great for our commander. And then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with the finality counter. Exile Charnel's Serenade with 3 time counters on it. It's really cool. It's able to recur itself. You could actually just cast it for its suspend instead of paying the 6, so you can go ahead and suspend it on turn 3 or 4, and then recur things with the finality counters on them. Really great. Let's look. So for the artifacts, I think the only new one is Ransom Note, which is a 1 mana artifact clue. When it enters the battlefield, survey 1, you can sacrifice it to pick 3 different modes. Cloak the top of your library, which is manifest, go to target creature, or draw a card. And for Boating Steamboat, which is 3 and 2 black, artifact vehicle. When it enters the battlefield, each player chooses 2 non-token, non-vehicle creatures they control. Exile them until it leaves the battlefield. Whenever foreboding Steamboat attacks, put a card exiled with it into its owner's graveyard if you do investigate. Kind of cool. I did end up taking this out for the upgrades. And the last new card I want to talk about is Case of the Shifting Visage. So 1 and 2 blue. At the beginning of your upkeep, surveil 1, really great for our commander. To solve, there are 15 or more cards in your graveyard, and then once it's solved, whenever you cast a non-legendary creature spell, copy that spell. Super cool. Super great for the mid game. So let's go ahead and jump over to the upgrades, which I have linked down below. Bam. Let's look at this now. So we're ending up taking out 4 lands, 2 of which are kind of situational. One is like almost like one's a signet land. That's what I call them. Port of Carfell is kind of awkward as well because it comes in tap. We want to sort of speed up the deck, and I believe just lands that come in untapped are just going to be better, obviously. So for these 2, I replace them for, I'll show you, I replaced them for other lands, and I ended up taking 2 lands out, which is going to be these 2 colorless lands. It's just really awkward when you get colorless lands and then you're just like, I have no spells to play because I have a whole bunch of colorless lands. We also ended up taking out Thoubound Phantasm Copy Catchers, which is also a new card in the deck. This says whenever you surveil, you may pay 1 in a blue. If you do, create a token that's a copy of it. It's a mana sink though, so, and it's just a 2. Not to say that it's just a 2/1, but it's just a mana sink. And I feel like after goldfishing this deck a specific amount of times that I've already done it, I would rather leave the mana up for counter spells or removal spells or something like that. Ways to interact with it, because there's not a bunch of interaction in this deck, and so I wanted to add a couple of those as well. So instead of creating 2/1 fairies, I opted out of that. Dimir Spybug, which is the Dimir cost. This I also took out too. It's just a beater in the air. Sometimes that does matter, I'm not gonna lie, but I want to be able to consistently put counters on our commander, and so I opted for things that do that instead. Whispering Snitch. This one is a maybe. I'm gonna be honest. Amphin Mutineer, Deep Analysis, not that great as well. Vizier of Many Faces I took out, which is unfortunate because it is a 0/0, so we could just get it out with Mirko, but I opted for another spell instead. Foreboding Steamboat is a nice card, just not in this deck. Overseer the Damned, Sphinx of the Second Sun. These are just high costed, and if their power was a little bit lower, I definitely would have loved to have at least the Sphinx of the Second Sun in, because we get the untaps at the end of our main phase 2, but I ended up cutting it. And then Connive and Concoct, they're just too mana intensive to put in this deck. So let's look at our upgrades, and today we did a budget of $100, so we're definitely gonna have fun with that. So first things first, under city sewers, I added that in here just because it has a surveil in here, and it does come in tap, but what are you gonna do about it? You know, it's cool. It's a nice little. It meshes really well with our deck as well. We added Offer You Can't Refuse just for a little bit more counter spells. Cyclonic Rift is the big chunk of this whole thing, honestly, but I just feel like you can't not have it. I mean, you could add other cards in, like there's a bunch of different kind of bounce spells. You have Evacuation, you have Washout, which will wash out a specific color. There are a bunch of things in there, but you gotta have it. We have Soul Diviner, which is Dimir. It's a creature zombie wizard from, I believe, War of the Spark. But this one is really cool because you can tap it, remove a counter from an artifact, creature, or land or planeswalker you can control, and you get to draw a card, which is really great because all these creatures that you're going to be recurring have finality counters on them, and if they get removed with the finality counter on them, they become exiled instead of going into your graveyard. The cool part about this is if you recur this from the grave with the finality counter on it, you can tap itself to remove it, draw a card, and go on. Go on about your day. We have Laser Screwdriver, which is another mana rock, but I love that Wizards are trying to do these 3-drop mana rocks with extra caveats to them, and this one is a really great one for the deck because one, it could tap for mana of any color. You can tap a target creature for 1 mana, but 2, you could surveil one, which will trigger our commander. We could do it at any moment in time, so the end step, boom, add another counter to it, recur something possibly, hopefully, and go about your day. And this one also has go target creatures. Sometimes people want to hold back their creatures because they're important. No, you're not going to get to do that. A ring sight from Lord of the Rings is it is a 1 and Dimir sorcery. The ring tempts you. Search your library card for a card that shares a color with the legendary creature you control. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Just a really great budget demonic tutor. It does have like the stipulation of having to control a legendary creature, but we do have a good amount of legendary creatures in here, so definitely add that to your deck. We have Clever Impersonator, which replaced the Vizier of Many Faces. The reason I did that is because it is also a 0/0, so you could have it come out with Mirko, but it can copy any permanent on the battlefield. So if you need a Smothering Tithe, a Rhystic Study, a Nykthos, possibly, the One Ring. I love it for its versatility, and that's why I decided to take out the Vizier of Many Faces to put that in its place. And it's only a $3 card, $3 to $4 card. So add that. It's great. We have That's of Deep Dwelling, just in case we need to blink some of our creatures that have ETB effects, which they do have it in this deck. A lot of it is still from the original Precon. Just great, just another great value engine, like a pseudo Panharmonicon, and it could also tab down creatures if we're not doing anything with the mana during our opponent's turns. We have Eloise, Nephilia Sleuth 3, and Dimir, legendary creature, human rogue. Whenever another creature you control dies, investigate. Great, gives us card draw. But whenever you sacrifice a token, surveil one, which is also great. So just a great value engine. Also just great if there's a board wipe, then we get to get a whole bunch of clue tokens and card draw effects. We have Living Death in here. We're gonna be surveilling so much that Living Death might just be game winning to us. There are really cool notable reprints in this deck. I should have talked about that, but I'll talk about that afterwards. But Living Death, great. We do have about 28 creatures in here, so that could just be really detrimental to the board, especially if we get our commander removed a couple times. Commander becomes super expensive. Living Death is a great way to clear the board. It acts like a pseudo board wipe. And just, you want to obviously time this to where you're gonna get the most value out of it as well, or you just need to nuke the board. Sidisi, Undead Vizier, 3 and 2 black, Death Touch exploit. When it exploits, you may search it's a demonic tutor. It's a $7 demonic tutor. It's also a 4/6, so it's not going to be too hard to get there with Mirko, and the fact that it's repeatable is always going to be great. Scarab God, God of the graveyards, of anyone's graveyard, of the underworld, is a one I wanted to include in here as well. Just great. Shieldred, Whispering One, also another great include in here. We get to have our opponent sacrifice creatures at their upkeep, and then for us, we get to recur creatures as well. And then Toxrill, the Corrosive, is also a 7 mana 7/7. I feel like this one's always kind of a feel bad when it hits the board, especially if you're playing against like weenie decks, token decks. But this deck needed some bombs, and that is probably the biggest Dimir bomb I can kind of think of in my head. And that's gonna be really it for our upgrades. We're looking at $96 for our upgrades. Obviously, there's plenty of these that you can kind of take out if you want to stick to a more restrictive budget. You could probably take out That's a Deep Dwelling and Toxrill, and really shave down the cost of your upgrades. But I just think there's just Toxrill, especially if you can keep Toxrill in the deck, I think that's great, because to be able to recur it, to be able to nuke people's boards slowly, could be really detrimental to them as well. Let's talk about some notable reprints that I forgot to say. Reanimate, which is a really great reprint, and the big one is probably Rise of the Dark Realms, which is also just another game winner. Let's look at Necromancy and Anime Dead are really great reprints for the deck, especially Necromancy. It was getting up there like at around $14, I believe, before this reprint. The old one is probably going to retain some of that value. It's probably going to take a hit, but regardless of that, I think that's great because you can play. It's a reanimation spell at instant speed. If you do it at instant speed, though, it does sacrifice itself at the, or I believe exile. There's a lot of words on it. One of those two at the end step of the turn that it came down on. But either way, I mean, hey, sometimes you might just need to Necromancy a Dockside Extortionist to really push you over the edge to your turn. Let's look at some other ones. Really great reprint. Oh, Grave Titan is always great to have. It's gone down a lot since then. Twilight Prophet, which I believe just got reprinted in the Clavilino deck from Lost Caverns of Ixalan, but really great nonetheless. You should be able to get there to the Ascend fairly quickly and start shaving down your opponent's life totals. Doom Whisperer is an all-star in this deck, obviously, because you could surveil, you know, pay 2 life and surveil 2, and just really get there before you come back even to your turn. Sir Conrad is going to be great for this deck. We do have 21 creatures, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. So 29 creatures you can possibly hit. And I mean, obviously you're not going to be able to hit everybody with that, but to be able to shave your opponent's lives down is always great. So I think that's going to be the upgrades that I have for this deck. Hopefully you guys, you know, let me know what you guys think about it. What would you guys add to the deck as well if you're on the $100 restrictive budget? And definitely just like, comment, subscribe. We're trying to get out more videos for you guys. We want to have more gameplay video for you guys. Hopefully we'll have more in the future. And have a good one, guys. Like, comment, and subscribe.